All right, joined now by WFAN host Danielle McCartan. And Danielle, I know this wasn't the start you were hoping for when you joined us last week. So what's your biggest takeaway after the first two games out in L.A.?
Man, it seems to be that the margin of error is razor thin one way or the other. Also, too, if you seem to be struggling, I'm thinking Austin Wells. I mean, the moment seems to find you, doesn't it? So it's been exciting. Don't get me wrong, but you're right. I wish we'd be talking about the Yankees being up 2-0 or a 1-1 split, not down 0-2 right now.
Yeah, well, you said last week that you didn't think this team could win the series without Aaron Judge getting things going. He's 1 for 9 with 6 strikeouts in this series, and it's no longer a small sample size. Take a look at the numbers. In 55 postseason games, he's now batting $199. And here's the jarring number. In 211 at-bats, he struck out 85 times. Now, he's been accountable, but what do you think the reception will be like for the captain for Game 3 here in the Bronx?
I mean, if there's ever a guy in need of the Trey Turner treatment, it's Aaron Judge. I mean, right now, I'm going to urge everyone that is lucky enough to hold a ticket to tomorrow night's game to give him the loudest ovation you've ever given him or any other player. I mean, Joe, we talked about it last week. The path to the parade runs through Judge. He's the huge piece that they need to win it all, and he's struggling. And so I am calling upon you, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and everywhere else, except L.A., pick the man up tomorrow in the bottom of the first inning. This year, his splits do show better offensive numbers at home. So if there's any time for Judge to catch fire and ignite this Yankees team, tomorrow night at the stadium, it has to be it. And to paraphrase or use a phrase from Yogi Berra, it's getting late early for him. And if he doesn't catch fire, it will be impossible for this Yankees team to win the World Series.
All right, if fans do cheer him when he steps up to the plate, though, and he strikes out in that first at-bat, as he's done a lot this series, is he going to get booed when he's walking back to the dugout?
I think he will be, and I think it's the wrong thing to do, but I think he will be, yeah.
All right, well, we saw Joe Torre once move a struggling Alex Rodriguez to the 8th spot. That was back in 2006 against the Tigers. Do you think the Yankees should consider moving Judge down in the lineup here to try and get him going?
I mean, in theory, it might work. I mean, he's not hitting, so why not move a guy who is hitting up in the order to get more at-bats? It makes sense. But in reality, I don't think it's too plausible, because if the Yankees slide Judge anywhere else in that lineup, it's not going to be far. Maybe a Judge-Stanton swap might be something they might realistically consider. But sometimes when you're in that box and you've got a clear mission, it brings out the best level of focus for the hitter. Like, you step into the box and you say to yourself, okay, there's a man on third. I need to look for something I could push to the right side of the field to get him in. So sometimes with like a clear-cut goal at the plate, it could help a mentally struggling hitter. So maybe just putting one more man ahead of him in the order and on the base paths might do the trick to put him in one of those types of I need to produce type situations, or even hit and run. Those are the kinds of things that need to you can use to focus a hitter at the plate.
I think it's interesting because after Game 2 was the first time I heard Judge admit that he might be pressing to try and make a play happen here in this World Series. And he even praised Gleyber Torres and Juan Soto for getting on base in front of him, said, I got to do my job now. But you mentioned that swap with Stanton, and I think that's interesting because we know how hot he has been in this postseason. What kind of a difference do you think it would make if Stanton is hitting third and Judge moves to fourth, specifically for Giancarlo?
I love the idea of moving Stanton to third because we've talked about this, but Torres is torrid as a leadoff hitter. Soto always has a knack for getting on base. And now you've entered a situation where there's a lot of traffic on the base paths for Superman Stanton, who is, yes, your hottest hitter in clutch moments to do some real damage. So also at the same time, it kind of allows Aaron Judge to kind of sit back, and let him see more pitches, which is always a good thing. And it also goes back to, let's just say 2 out of those 3 guys get on ahead of him. I mean, there's a good chance one of those guys can end up on third base. So if I'm looking at this situation, if I'm, filling out that lineup card for the Yankees, I'm looking at this going, okay, Stanton will help us batting third, and Judge will probably benefit by sliding down a little bit to fourth in this lineup. Again, I'm not talking 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm talking maybe a 4 switch might be good.
All right. Well, some news from the Dodgers side today. And when the name Shohei Ohtani is involved, we got to talk about it even here on Yankees Nation. Manager Dave Roberts said Ohtani is okay and will play Monday night in Game 3, despite the fact that he injured his shoulder trying to steal a base late in Game 2. Looked like he was in pain there. I think they called it a slight dislocation. Let's start with this. What have you seen from Ohtani's impact on this series in Games 1 and 2?
I actually think the Yankees have done a good job, really, the pitching staff, in neutralizing him so far this season. Look, I know he can get hot at any moment, but so far, he hasn't been the guy to beat the Yankees. So I look at that. It's his left shoulder. It's his back shoulder in the box. So, how can that, impact them moving forward? Maybe not so much power or lift from him tomorrow night. You got to think ground balls for Ohtani. And if you actually look at Ohtani's career splits, too, the stadium in which he has the lowest batting average, by the way, in all of the stadiums he's ever played in, Yankee Stadium. And the batting average on balls in play is even lower. So that's a good sign for the Yankees moving forward. Keep neutralizing him and don't let him beat you. And they've been doing a good job so far.
Yeah, you mentioned the job that the pitchers have been doing. Despite that, you think back to game one. It's his double off the wall and then getting to third base. That might be the difference there as he comes home on the sac fly for Mookie Betts. So even when he's not having a Shohei Ohtani-sized impact, he's still definitely making a difference in the series. All right, Danielle, what's your level of confidence in Schmidt heading into this, albeit must-win game here for the Yankees?
Yeah, I mean, actually, for a Game 3 starter, pretty high. Because I took a look at Clark Schmidt's career numbers when coming off extensive periods of rest, which, of course, this is. And it really seems to be when he is really at his best. And it's not a small sample size. So that's a big relief for me to have come across just a little while ago. And also, too, if Clark Schmidt gets into trouble kind of early on-ish, as crazy as it sounds, he's actually a better pitcher when he's pitching from behind on the scoreboard. So he seems to have the right mindset, as we just heard. And so for these two reasons, I'm nervous. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a must-win game, but I actually don't think the moment will be too big for Clark Schmidt. And he seems to be comfortable throughout his career on long periods of rest between starts. So for a Game 3 starter, I'm a little bit more confident in him than Rodon as a Game 2 starter, to be honest.
Interesting there. Well, Schmidt hasn't given up more than 2 runs this postseason. He hasn't exactly pitched deep into games, though. Not that really many pitchers do these days. Do you think that Aaron Boone should have a little more faith in him, give him a little bit longer leash in this game, even with the Yankees with their backs against the wall?
Yeah, I mean, it was criminal what he did with Garrett Cole after 88 pitches. But, you just got to see what the situation of the game is. If it looks like he could be spiraling out of control, then of course, then you do it. But for what he did with Garrett Cole, I mean, Derek Jeter said it perfectly. He said it's a domino effect on not only this game tonight, but tomorrow's game and the rest of the series. And I'm sure we'll talk about it, but you cannot pull Garrett Cole in that situation.
Let's go there right now, because after the game, Garrett Cole said that he didn't fight Boone when he was out there. He admitted that he was feeling a little gassed there, even though it was only in the 80s with the pitch count. How much blame do you put on Cole for that? Because I know Boone was taking some of the criticism. After the game, I think the story changed a little bit.
I don't know. It might be a player sticking up for his manager. Cole is your ace. He's your number one. He's your workhorse. He is your most reliable pitcher, and he's your only starting pitcher with World Series experience, which to me, of course, matters. So to pull him after just 88 pitches, having given up just 1 run, is actually mind-blowing for me. And there are only 4 games this year where Garrett Cole has fewer than 88 pitches. 2 of them were in his first 2 starts coming off the injury in June. I cannot rationalize it. I can't figure it out. Boone deserves every bit of criticism for that ridiculous, numbers-driven, analytics-driven over-managing. And there is no doubt in my mind that if the Yankees lose Game 3, God forbid, Garrett Cole is going to get the ball to start Game 4, and he should leave him in there until the wheels fall off.
All right, well, that was my next question then. Do you think they're playing the long game here now with Cole obviously getting the chance to go in Game 4, and then possibly get him to go in Game 7 again should the Yankees be able to force a Game 7?
Yeah, I mean, a long game, and you got to win Game 1 first to start thinking about Game 7, right?
Yeah.
So a ridiculous move. It's one of those things that if the Yankees do end up losing the series, you're going to look back and point to that and say that was one of the reasons why.
All right, one other spot that I think a lot of people are going to look back on is the decision to bring Nestor Cortes in Game 1. It backfired. What did you make of the move to go with Nestor over Tim Hill to face Ohtani and Freeman in that spot?
Joe, it might be Aaron Boone's worst managerial decision, so as long as being manager of the New York Yankees. Throwing Nestor Cortes to the Wolves in that situation. I mean, the guy hadn't pitched since September 18th, and I still, 2 days later, cannot find the logic in throwing him out there in that situation.
All right, I'm going to interrupt you there because I'm going to go back on you here because Boone is in a lose-lose situation. If he goes to Tim Hill and Ohtani gets on, everybody says after, how come you don't go to Nestor? He's been been great against Ohtani, and he's on this roster. If not, then when? And obviously, if you go with Nestor, you got to live with what happened. So how do you manage that spot if you're Boone?
You don't throw a guy in the fire with the season, the series possibly hanging in the balance, a guy who hasn't pitched in over almost a month and a half. To me, Tim Hill's been pretty lights out. I don't want to say lights out, but he's been pretty good in the postseason. And you know what? So be it. If Shohei Ohtani gets on, that's not the worst possible thing in the world, with runners in front of him especially. So you can't let Nestor, who, by the way, he's a starting pitcher, you can't let him come into the game, having runners on already. You got to start him with a clean inning. He inherited 2 runners. They both ended up scoring. And I think Boone did not set Nestor Cortez up for success at all with that move. And I think, to me, that might be the single worst move he's ever made as manager. Why not start the inning with Nestor Cortez then and see what happens?
Even though he gets Ohtani.
Yeah, even though he gets Ohtani.
Jose Trevino getting his first at-bat of the series with a chance to be the hero. Sounded good off the bat, but just a routine fly ball to center field. Trevi was pinch hitting for Austin Wells, who is a brutal 4 for 41 in his first postseason. That's just an .098 batting average. Let's bring in Danielle McCartan again. And Danielle, the question now is, who should start behind the plate in Game 3 tomorrow night?
I mean, I know he's virtually an automatic out, but it has to be Austin Wells. He's the better defensive catcher this season. And you also don't want to have too many moving parts in Game 3. It's a major adjustment for the pitchers, too, don't forget. And, you just hope and pray that he could just do a little something more than he has at the plate than he has been, So I just think that his defense and his rapport with the pitching staff, for those 2 reasons, I have to keep him in the starting lineup.
I feel like there's got to be a lot of rosary beads out in New York right about now with all those thoughts and prayers that are going up with each at bat. All right, you say you don't want to make too many changes. So if you're keeping Wells behind the plate, Alex Verdugo also struggling. He's 4 for his last 31 going back to the ALCS. Boone said defense has been a factor in keeping him in the lineup, but is it worth giving Jason Dominguez a game here?
I don't think so. If I'm Aaron Boone, I'm also sticking with Verdugo, too. I mean, the stakes are the highest. You literally cannot afford to make a single defensive mistake, physical or mental, and it might cost you the game. So I cannot see Dominguez going head over heels into the stands to make a play like Verdugo, too, by the way. He's a center fielder, and his entire career, he's only started 70 games in left field, with 12 at the major league level. So with razor-thin margins, I'm going with my more experienced fielder, which is Verdugo. And not to mention, Dominguez hit 179 in the regular season, so his offense isn't even worth the potential defensive risk at this point in the series. So now the World Series is not the time for left fielders tryouts for the New York Yankees. Stick to the tried and true, and he might come through.
All right, if you're looking for a guy who maybe could break out with the offense in this game here, you got to look at Anthony Volpe, right? He has hit the ball hard. He did have that at-bat in the 9th inning of Game 2 where the situation looked a little big for him. What have you thought of Volpe's approach here in the series in this postseason?
I mean, good so far, right? I mean, really, he's been pretty good so far offensively, and I just think, unfortunately, if the Yankees end up losing this series, we talked a little bit before about those moments. I mean, that at-bat is going to be one of those key moments where you look back and say, that could have changed the complexion of this entire series. And I love Anthony Volpe. I mean, I talked with him when he was a minor leaguer, and he told me his strikeout percentage of 16% was too high. I know it's eating him up, but unfortunately, he didn't come through in a crucial spot with the game on the line. And that pitch wasn't anywhere close. And if you go back to the entire at-bat, Volpe chased in total, I think there are 5 pitches in that at-bat. He chased 3 of them out of the zone. He needs to slow his heart rate down, block out the noise, and he needs to be more disciplined. And I think he can. All
right, if you're looking for a silver lining here, the Yankees came back from an 0-2 hole back in 1996. Danielle, they're going to come back from this 0-2 hole
if Judge starts hitting. I mean, really, he is the missing piece to this Yankees team and the key to win the World Series.
All right, we'll see if the home crowd, 45 to 50,000 screaming fans, can help the Bombers get back in the series. Thank you so much for the time. Don't forget, you can check out Danielle on The Fan on weekend nights. You can also find her on Twitter at Coach McCartan. It's been a pleasure this whole playoff run. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, Joe, anytime. Thank you.